Mr. Manila, Mr. Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Dougherty.
Here.
Mr. Drum. And Mr. Randolph.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. On the announcements, phones and pagers, if you will, please turn them off or silence them. If you disagree with any decisions this commission makes, you have the opportunity to appeal to the council. The appeal cards are over to my right on the railing there. Speaker cards, if you wish to speak on any case, they need to be completed, and they too are over on the railing to my right. On public speaking, you have 10 minutes on each side with the opportunity for a 5-minute rebuttal. And once your case is heard, if you have a group with you and you want to discuss it further, please exit the building. Don't go out in the lobby there because the sound does come back into the chambers here. Mr. Randolph, will you do the invocation, and Mr. Matthews, the pledge? Please rise.
Gracious Father, most holy one, we come to you once again to say thank you for your grace and mercy, for watching over and protecting us and our families, our homes, this parish. We thank you for this commission. We thank you for this government, Lord. We thank you for those that are not as fortunate we are. We ask that you continue to bless us, continue to bless this commission, and have us to make the decision that's in the best interest of all. And all these blessings we ask in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Martha's still here. All right, next item on our agenda is approval of the January 5th meeting minutes. There was a copy in your packets. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review them, and are there any necessary changes or corrections? I'll accept a motion to approve. Moved by Mr. Lauren to approve, seconded by Mr. Matthews. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Staff, do we have any cases that need to be postponed?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, first case is zoning case 2015-57-ZC. Existing zoning is NC5 Retail and Service District. Proposed zoning is A8 Multiple Family Residential District. It's 1.933 acres. The petitioner is Jessica Lacey and Jared Bowers. Owner is JSB Mandeville LLC. Parcel located on the south of Louisiana Highway 22, north of West Causeway Approach, east of Moore Road, west of Dalwell Drive, Ward 4, District 10. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with commercial uses. Staff does not see any compelling reason to recommend approval of the request, considering that the A8 zoning district would create a significant increase in intensity of the uses in the area. As it was noted last month, the maximum density of the A8 is 1 unit per 1,500 square feet of property, which would allow potentially up to 1.9 which would allow for the 1.9 acre site to be developed with potentially a total of 55 units. At this time, staff would like to recommend denial of the request, and some letters have been distributed to you, as well as a plan from the owner.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Mr. Bowers. I'm representing this property.
The name, please?
John Bowers.
Bowers, okay.
Yes, sir. And I'd like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about this property and why we're asking for this zoning change. Last month when we were here, you all felt like there were some issues that needed to be addressed, primarily speaking to the council person of record. I've had numerous conversations with Ms. O'Brien in which we've discussed the density concerns, and we've agreed to have the deed modified to show that upon receipt of the zoning change that we're requesting today, we would make no more than 45 units, not the 55 that would be allowed. So we've addressed the density concern that was voiced. The other concern that was voiced was whether or not we had had met with the residents around there. This area is completely surrounded by commercial. It's actually one of the areas of Mandeville and St. Tammany that is quite commercialized. It's an area that has not one residential person around it. It's abutted by a Savers Center, a former Savers Center that's now a Rouse's, and then around the property is a very transient area of a bowling alley that's quite run down. Our family's committed to build 45 first-class apartments in this area. Every single building is going to be age-end by the AARP, which is a zoning change that we're going to put into the title as well. Every unit on the first floors, we're going to build with that age-in concept, which would allow folks in the Mandeville area to stay in Mandeville but not have to leave Mandeville because there's no reasonable accommodations for them. We feel this is a very compelling plan. We have plenty of green space. We're not asking for any changes with the green space. I've spoken to numerous neighbors around the property. Many of them have addressed concerns about the access to the property. We actually, when we purchased the property, purchased a 20-foot right-of-way to the property from Highway 22. We feel that that's more than adequate for the 45 units of record that we're going to build. But in addition, we have begun negotiating to have a rear exit to accommodate traffic flow in the event that there's a concern there. That's the only concern that's been voiced that was reasonable. So we would agree to achieve that mission with the resident and the neighbor to the south of the property. Other than that, the only neighbor that I've spoken to that had any other concern has a general drainage concern across all of the property in this area, not just ours. And I have agreed to work with the parish to determine if there's anything that we could do with all of these buffers to do some retention ponds that would add some physique to the property and also address a problem that's candidly not ours, but as a good neighbor, we would work with them to overcome it. In addition, I spoke to the councilman and agreed to provide a community meeting where anyone that's in the area could meet with us, and then through a cooperative endeavor agreement, we could agree to restrictive covenants around the type of building materials that we would use, etc. So we've really approached this collaboratively. We've openly worked countless hours to try to overcome any objection, and I think that this is a great use of a property that's completely surrounded by some of the ugliest property currently in our parish. And I think this is a revitalization effort that I think really warrants the opportunity to have this property changed from a zoning perspective. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak for? Is there anyone that wishes to speak against? Please come forward, state your name, one at a time. Or...
I would like to go first because I probably have the least to say as compared to these gentlemen. My name is Margot Bragg. I've been a resident of Mandeville. I live in Beauchene. I've been there 25 years. I've heard everything you said about, accommodations. My major concern is 22 is gridlock all day. I mean, the time it takes me to get from that main gate out of Beauchene up to Rouse's or further for shopping it's just a nightmare. More traffic in that area it's just going to be horrendous on the people who live in that community. So I don't see that the road, the pipe, is large enough to accommodate more cars. So that's an issue. And number two, I've been here 25 years. And slowly but surely, I feel, and I mean, my husband's from Old Metairie, family still live there. I don't mean this, but slowly but surely, Mandeville is starting to look and feel like Metairie. It's just way too condensed. So for that reason, I ask you to decline the request and keep Mandeville feeling as it should, or figure out a way to pipe those cars through with the roads. That's
Okay.
it.
What was your last name, please?
Bragg, B-R-A-G-G, Margot.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
And for the record, you get the address for the record.
What?
You need to get the address.
Yeah, did you fill out a speaker card?
I did.
Okay, we have it on record with. All right, anyone else wish to speak against?
Yes, sir.
My name's Mike Storms, and I'm the adjacent landowner. My property directly abuts the property Mr. Bowers owns. He actually bought it from me a year or so after Katrina, about 9 or 10 years ago. First off, I support growth in St. Tammany. I'm a business owner here. I've been a business owner here for over 21 years, and I support smart growth. The property's zoned commercially because everything around it's commercial. The apartments would have access of a 20-foot servitude, which is a tiny, tiny driveway, and it's 600 approximately feet long. The apartments would face the dumpster at my building, the dumpster in back of a doctor's office, and a 4-bay 18-wheeler access behind Rouse's and their service driveway and all their dumpsters. For a safety concern for us, we have over 250 kids a day that come through the doors and their brothers and sisters and moms and dads to our character development, life skills, martial arts-based school. And so our concern is this 20-foot passage that is designed to go to a commercial office building will be an avenue for 2.5 cars per unit going out each day to go to the grocery, go to the dry cleaners, go to work, go to activities. So multiplying that, it will be several hundred car trips a day right in front of our building where our parents drop the kids off and the kids walk across this little 20-foot area in the parking lot. Flooding, as Mr. Bauer said, is a concern of all of us there because the parking lot and the bowling alley, if you guys have ever driven there after rain, it floods. So when people are supposed to go down that 20-foot passage, they swerve all over the parking lot to avoid the water, increasing the dangers there. And as Margot said, I just met her tonight, the 22 traffic is horrible. It's a parking lot. So adding that on there will make it more difficult. The parish-wide comprehensive rezoning that they did at great expense, they didn't see the need to make that a residential option. It's commercial because it's all commercial around it. And one of the concerns we have is viability. Even if Mr. Bowers, and I know he's willing to invest, I talked to him this morning, he's willing to invest a great deal of money in the apartment complex, who's going to want to live at the back of a dilapidated bowling alley? When we went there, the bowling alley wasn't in bad shape 16 years ago. And there's a child care center. And there's my land. So I was like, hey, it's bowling. It's a daycare center. It's an insurance agency. It's us right there. So that kind of works. Now, the bowling alley's gone down considerably in the last 16 years since we built there, which we're not thrilled about. So hopefully that'll get redone. And it's really a C-rated center. When I spoke to real estate people in the last week as I was preparing for this, Mandeville residents really, really want A spaces, and I don't know the viability of, even if it's really pretty on the inside, who's going to want that drive through that parking lot to go to the back of the 3 or 4 businesses that are there. And another piece of paper I gave you, I spoke to some local realtors, and they gave me a list of all the projects that are coming on in Mandeville and Covington. There's 800 to 1,000 apartments that have already been financed, approved, and permitted, many of them already breaking ground, where there's going to be a tremendous number of apartments available. And I still have a vacant half acre on my property, and every time I call my agent once a year, I'm like, hey, is it time for me to build an office building? They're like, Mike, there's like 99 office buildings for rent in Mandeville. It's not time yet. We have to get some more absorption in there. So again, I'm pro-development. But this project, as far as moving from commercial to residential, doesn't really seem to fit the bill. But again, you can put the highest quality multifamily there on the North Shore, but it's still going to be in the back of a bowling alley that's in dire need of a facelift. And I wasn't sure when I talked to Mr. Bowers today, I'm not sure if there are any traffic studies done or engineering studies or significant homework done and investment made to check the viability on it. And I know he's a very successful businessman, and everybody in his family is, but development is a different animal than business, and I don't fully understand it. That's why I have mentors that help me with it. And my concern is, once it's there, who's going to rent it, right? Who's going to want to be there? And another little mention is, and this will be the last thing I'm going to say, is as it gets built, Mr. Bowers was speaking to me this morning about, well, they're kind of going to do like one building at a time, and I don't know if that is the best plan for it too, rather than having a completed complex, which will show the people what their other neighboring houses and buildings will look like. And I think that from the plan that he shared with me today, he was kind enough to email it to me, I don't know that there's retention areas which will significantly change his density. And if the density goes below 45 units, it's probably not a viable financial project based on the rents, the $4 million it's going to cost to build the apartments, and the $1 million he already has invested in the land. So, but being the adjoining business owner, I would love to see it developed into a nice office complex. I just don't think it's a good fit to have the traffic and the density of multifamily living there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Storm. Anyone else wish to speak against? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Chuck Miramon, my business is at 4402 Highway 22, right next to Mike Storms. And I'm just really, I think, agree with the sentiments that Mr. Storms and Ms. Bragg just brought up. And Highway 22 is already over capacity as far as infrastructure, moving cars in and out there. And to add this apartment complex and its density is just going to throw more fuel on the fire there. And until we can figure out how we can move cars better through this area, I don't see how a multi-complex apartment is going to help that. And I think what Ms. Bragg was alluding to is the quality of life that we've had here and we've enjoyed here in the Mandeville area, and it's getting away from us, and we have a chance to do something about it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak against? All right, we'll go to rebuttal. You wish to rebut?
Well, I think Mr. Storm did outline a lot of concerns about economics, but candidly, you guys aren't in position to understand economics. It's not what you're here to do. You're here to make a good business decision for zoning. I think I've made a very compelling argument to help folks stay in Mandeville. There's not a cost-effective place today for elderly folks to stay in Mandeville other than in assisted living centers that are completely full and that are priced sky high. We have openly addressed the need for that. We are not proposing to build hundreds of apartments like they do in Metairie. You're talking about 45 units where we could put 55. There is no zoning between then. So we can't do anything other than ask for the zoning change that we're asking for. But we've worked with the residents. We've listened to the concerns. When I spoke to Mr. Storm today, it was over an hour conversation where he outlined the concerns that he noted today. And when he sold me that property, he didn't mention his concerns about traffic or these other things. He told me that he was for development. We purchased the property 10 years ago. We've paid our taxes on the property. We're trying to build 45 apartments. We're not building 500, 45 high-quality apartments where I've agreed with the council person of record to have the property deeded so that the property is of the highest quality. I can't change the traffic on 22, and candidly, neither can you all. But I think that overriding a business decision that makes sense for residents that have come to Mandeville way before these folks did or I did, and they're openly asking for an alternative to an assisted living centers that aren't even available for them. You're talking about 45 units of the highest quality that we will build, and we will do it right, and I've agreed to have the property deeded that will control every single aspect of this development, including the colors of the bricks, including the landscaping. We know going and putting $4 million near an old bowling lane is a challenge. It's a gamble, but that's what zoning's about. It's about looking at eyesores today that you can change tomorrow. I'm asking for your support. This is a very blighted area of Mandeville. We would like to lead the transformation process. We're willing to put our money where our mouth is. Most people are going to come here and complain and tell you that they don't want, but they don't want to make changes. They don't want to step up and invest their capital to make the changes that are necessary in a redevelopment. I stand before you ready to do that. I appreciate your understanding and consideration.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Bragg or Mr. Storm, Mr. Miramon, any of y'all want to rebut?
Yes, sir, just quickly. Yeah, no question. Do take, what was the word that was used? Blighted. I have $1.5 million invested in my karate school on Highway 22. And if you've ever driven by there, fantastic landscaping. You walk in, it's like you're walking in a surgeon's office with the art and the paint and the decor, because my family deserve the best. I don't think Chuck's State Farm office is blighted. I think what the blight is referring to probably is the bowling alley. But again, the concerns are the fit, right? And the traffic and all of those other concrete things that we talked about. And when I sold it to him, of course, yes, it's zoned commercial. There's plenty, that 20-foot driveway is plenty access for commercial. Just residential is a totally different density and traffic model. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking against wish to rebut? I'll close the floor.
Speak one more time.
All right.
And Chuck Miramon, I'd like to reemphasize again the thoroughfare from 22 to where this apartment complex we built, approximately 600 feet or longer, that'll be a dangerous situation for pedestrians going to and from offices. And, you know, I believe that we can avoid that by squashing this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Davis.
I have a couple of questions for Mr. Bowers, please. Yes, sir. You said you have about a 600-foot access off of 22 all the way to the northern part of the property where the entrance is going to be. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you have any intentions on going south to Causeway Approach?
At this time, what our plan is we're going to come off at 22. When Mr. Storm brought up the concerns about the children, what I proposed to him was part of that servitude, and what I was sold was that servitude was kept up. So what I agreed to do with Mr. Storm, due to his concerns about children, was that I would take the initiative to ensure that it was properly striped. If you've got 600 feet, whether they're going another 50 feet to our apartment complex or to Mr. Storm's karate, it sounds to me like there's an issue here that needs to be addressed. Instead of using it as a reason not to build, I think what I proposed to Mr. Storm today was that I would take the bull by the horns and get it fixed. Second of all, to answer your question about access, the access is 600 feet. It's currently zoned for commercial. As it's zoned today, we could go back there and put approximately 8 5,000 square foot little businesses. If you think about the traffic of 8 individual little businesses that are operating back there, it far exceeds the traffic that one would have with 45 apartment units, especially considering 12 of the 45 units are completely marketed and targeted to assisted living. So when I hear the traffic concerns, it's comical to me because we're under developing this property by doing this utilization. But people are not allowing that to sink in or accepting that as reality. They're simply stating there's traffic on 22. Well, I didn't create the traffic on 22. I'm trying to reduce the traffic. So the other thing that we've done is we've contacted the landowners that are against the property on the Dowwell Drive side. At this time, they are not currently developing that property, but both have agreed and are required, as you know, under law, to give us cross-access. So as our plan today, we've went in, and this is a change since our last zoning meeting, we've changed to show that rear entrance, which we will agree to utilize through our existing neighbors' properties. I did something similar to this on Highway 21 many years ago, and it worked perfectly. I did a cooperative endeavor agreement with the Flowers Estates folks. I honored every single word of that.
If you were able to get access on the Dowell side, would you even need access off of 22?
We think the access off of 22 is good. We think dual access makes the most sense. So at this time, we're asking for it based upon what we've bought, which was the access off of 22. But I have committed, and I'm committing today publicly, that we will make every measure necessary to try to access this property off of Dowell. It makes more sense because it is prettier from the standpoint of not having to drive through a parking lot. At this time, the owners on the Dowell side are nearly impossible to communicate with. I haven't been able to speak to them. I've only been able to speak to their representatives through real estate firms, and I really have not been able to get a position on that. I did speak to our in-house counsel who has reviewed the laws of St. Tammany, and obviously cross-access is allowed. It's required, so we believe we can obtain that. That would be a process that we are prepared to move forward with, sir.
And obviously, the staff makes recommendation that the density is just way too high. I mean, I understand you're going to be dropping it from 55 to
45.
55 to 45. Even A7, even if it was downzoned to A7.
Right.
You'd have it like 34 units.
Yeah, 40 seems to be the economic swing, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we're willing to, if you zoned it higher and you said, look, I need you to live with 40, I could truly live with 40. If you get under 40, based on what we paid for the land and the quality of the facility that we plan to build, it just becomes economically unviable.
It's just that, obviously, I don't really have too much complaint with actually having residences in this area, but I do have a little bit of problem with the density as is with this design. I mean, I'm looking at, and again, this is just something that's going through my head here now. I mean, this building 4 that you have in the back,
Yes.
to me, I mean, it doesn't even look like it should even be there. I mean, that looks like that should be a retention pond, which may even take care of all your drainage problems. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and we just laid it out. I mean, if you give support of this project and cap the number of units at 40, truly, I'm willing to accept that. But anything less than 40, sir, it simply makes zero sense to do it, and it'll continue to sit there.
And I can understand from a business point that that's your financial
Yeah,
need.
it's a tough one.
No, I understand it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Lauren?
Thank you, David. Mr. Bauer, on the Dowell side, I'm very familiar with this property, but the Dowell Drive I'm not familiar with. Does it exist from 22 down to the property now?
Yes, sir. It goes from 22 all the way through the property, all the way to Highway 22, which is the street that the folks are complaining about the traffic.
Does Dowell?
Yes, sir, it does.
Does it go all the way from 22 all the way to Causeway Approach?
Yes, sir, it does.
It does?
Yes, sir.
Then why is there the need to go through the parking lot?
Because, as I stated to the gentleman moments ago, currently, the access to Dowell would have to come from an existing neighbor, and that existing neighbor has not developed the property yet. I've just started speaking to them earlier this week. But when I purchased...
Wait. You confuse me. I'm looking at the plans that are here.
It's possible he'd have to get access from the neighbor here. So he has to start the back end of 22. Because it's not open yet,
This is not Dowell here?
right here.
Oh, no, it's just showing the Dowell
Okay,
side. That's not
okay.
an actual road.
Okay, so the only, all right, now I understand. Let me point out a couple of things to the commissioners, if I can real quick. If you look at the thing that's in your packet, that's the overhead view, the photograph, like, what do you want to call it, sky view or whatever the heck it is? Google Earth.
Yes, sir.
The big white one over on the left-hand side is the bowling alley. We've identified the property that we're discussing as this 2015 57ZC. All of that middle, well, over in the lower, between the two properties, those two properties, there's an urgent care facility. A ready-med, whatever you want to call it. And that parking lot, when it rains heavy, is like a swimming pool. So cars going in and through that parking lot, going to any of these facilities, have a tendency to just to drive wherever there's high ground. Okay? So I don't care if you paint stripes diligently where the 20-foot servitude is. If that floods, people are not going to adhere to it. They're going to drive where they can drive. You follow what I'm saying? It's just a shame you can't have some kind of access other than going through that parking lot. That's a problem.
Yeah, first I learned of this water that's being retained was when I spoke to Mr. Storm today for in excess of an hour. I will tell you that I was not aware of that, number one. Number two, That particular water is not being caused by my property. In fact, Mr. Storm informed me, majority of that water is currently coming onto our property. So the good news is when we work to develop this, we will obviously take into account that water, and we will work to get that water drained correctly. I believe it's due to lack of drains in the actual parking lot because, to be honest with you, this bowling lane that's been discussed so much today is quite old, and there's been very little done to it. In fact, Mr. Storm was telling me today that they don't even change the light bulbs in the parking lights and the lots out there, that he's been forced to have to do that himself. And I reminded him that every project we've done, and I think we met when we did our project on Highway 21 with you many years ago, we've done nothing but the highest quality projects. This will have an entrance that'll look like you're entering Walt Disney World, and we will have it lit accordingly. And as far as going out and striping it, we took that on, and I will put that as a condition of the use being granted to me. We will get that striped. We will put the bumps in that are required. But candidly, somebody should have done that on their business a long time ago. But I will do it myself to be a good resident and to be a good neighbor to the property.
Mr. Barrow, the problem I've got, and I'm not trying to debate with you, I'm just saying that the whole parking lot has got places in it that's got, over time, that blacktop is sunk. And they're pools.
Yeah.
And they're random.
Well, I know that when I bought the property, it came with the servitude, and it sounds to me like we need to go look at how that servitude is being enforced and whether or not it's being enforced correctly, because to your point, if that's not able to be used, then I think we have some other issues that we need to have addressed. But I don't think that should change a request to do a slight zoning change that allows for us to take a piece of land that currently is completely not utilized. It's surrounded by some challenging area of the parish. We're trying to go in and do the right thing and make this an area that elderly folks can afford. And, you know, candidly, it's going to be a high-quality project. We're proposing all brick. This is not going to be some, you know, trashy-looking outside building. Again, I agreed today to Mr. Storm that I'd enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement like I did with you and Mr. Wilkie years ago. I'm willing to have the neighbors have input in the gardening or the landscaping plan, if you would, as well as in the colors of the exterior of the buildings. I don't see many people come up here and offer all of these things to try to do a project. I really believe in this project. I live less than 1/10 of a mile from this project. The last thing I'm going to do is do something that I'm not proud of driving by every evening when I go home. So again, I feel like it's a very reasonable request, and I know this is a tough one for the zoning commission, but I really believe this is the right decision for this property.
Ms. Casabon?
Yes, you stated that you were willing to have, I heard, deed restriction. What exactly are your plans, or what would be in that deed restriction?
So in the deed restriction, I've proposed all of the below that I'm going to give you tonight to the council person and to Mr. Storm, who's the only resident that I've heard from since this started. Number one, that we'd only have 45 units, even if we got the zoning that would allow the 55. So we would downzone it from that perspective, from the density concern. Number two, that we would work to understand the drainage concerns out there, and on all of the green space that we have, which we actually have an abundance of, I would work with the parish to utilize that for drainage, so we could do some detention ponds or retention ponds. The third thing that we agreed to is that the building, from the landscaping schedule as well as the color schedule of the exterior, would be agreed upon by us and the landowners through the council person. And so our proposal was to give them tremendous amount of feedback and allow them to have a lot of cooperation. We tried to do this totally transparent. We didn't try to do this, you know, in the back room. We contacted Ms. O'Brien. I've been available to Ms. O'Brien throughout the last 2 weeks. I've spoken to her no less than a dozen times, even when I've been out of the country. And I have assured her that this project is going to be of the highest quality. And she asked me, will you put it in writing? I said, I will offer the deed to you. And she said that spoke a lot to her about my commitment. I did similar to this on a project that we did out on Highway 21. And the councilman of record, Mr. Dean, did contact Ms. O'Brien. He said I was A-OK in District 1.
I have a lot of concern that we have a real need in this parish for assisted living, as we hear people come up and have, you know, we rezone things so we can put trailers for the elderly and so on, but there's a lot of other more assistant living areas. Would you be willing to increase the number from 12, to say to maybe half, to have more apartments or whatever on that side? Because I look at it, or even more than that, because the assistant living, you're not going to have the traffic that you would have for coming and going, because of usually there are sitters and the place to take care of them and so on. I would be more interested if I knew that there were some more of the assistant living within this 45 number. I don't know if that entails, or what it entails, but there's just a lot of, I think that there would be more traffic if it remains the commercial, like the in and out traffic. It sounds as if you have put a lot of thought into this and looked at the problems of the area, and you've got a plan. And
I do.
The plan seems to me that it will improve the area.
Thank you.
It's a means of getting to the problem and the recognition of the problem of the drainage and so on. Later on down the road, when you would be able to access, do I understand you have to get in contact with the owner to come out to have the two accesses?
Yes, ma'am. Let me address the first question you had. I will commit that every single unit on the first floors of all 4 buildings will be built with the age-in requirements as completely qualified by AARP, and I will put that in the deed. So that's
Okay.
proving that I'm not baiting and switching you. Number 2, I can tell you that I was reviewing this plan with a local bank at Starbucks in Mandeville, and I was openly referring to the project. There was 2 people who stopped at that Starbucks, just customers. One actually works for an assisted living center quite well known off of Highway 21. And she said, I can't tell you how many people are currently in Brewster Commons across the street, back there by the Sam's Club, that are looking for what you're trying to do. And she said, have you thought of age-in by AARP? And I said, yes, ma'am, let me show you. And she said, you have a home run there. She said, you're taking an area and building a very small, cohesive neighborhood for people that are being pushed out of these big homes in Mandeville that can't afford the taxes.
How many units would we be talking about on that?
You're looking at least 12, but I will tell you, I have to confirm with our engineers, but I believe we can do everything that they require an age-in, which is the walk-in showers, the lower sinks, those type of things. As long as it's able to be done, I'm willing to commit to 25% of the units, which I think is more than fair. And the second question, yes, I would love to have a rear access out of this property for obvious reasons, just for overall.
Yeah, just in and out, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So as soon as we can work with the landowners, assuming that they cooperative, that's absolutely our intention. But I can't commit to something that I don't own or have control over. I can commit to what I can do, and that's everything that I've promised you tonight.
Because the in and out, and like you said, if this is assistant living,
Yep.
that we want to make sure that someone could get, to this property from, and if the front part is aging, we need to make sure that we have a safe way of getting in and out.
And as I told Mr. Storm, again, because he was the only resident that showed any negativity to this project this morning, I told him, to me, instead of creating the 8 little businesses with people coming and going and driving through and possibly hitting these same children that he's concerned about, most locations like this that have age-in clientele, to your point, these are people that are in transitional zones. These aren't people that need help, so they're not in assisted living, but these are people that no longer want to afford or keep up a huge dwelling. I don't see those people coming and going like I see a dry cleaners back there, or I see the Ready-Med, or I see these other things that people are saying, well, it's zoned, go do that. To me, while it seems like we're asking for a zoning change, in many ways it's a down zoning change from the use, because we're not pile driving units in there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
See, Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions too. You had volunteered the possibility of 40 units. That would be much more acceptable, I know, to me, to get to the 40 units, which would reduce the traffic, which would reduce many of the problems that people have talked about. We can't make that a condition, but I would surely like to hear that you're volunteering to reduce it from 45 to 40.
Yes, sir, I would agree to that.
Okay. You said that you would reduce, or you would commit to having 25% of the properties to be the age-in, is that what it's called?
It's called age-in, yes, sir.
Even at 45, that's only 11 units. So 25%, you'll be reducing the number of aged-in units. I like the first floor. If you could do that first floor,
We'll agree to do every apartment that we build in there, and of the 40, every one on the first floor will be built with the age-in requirements completed.
okay, so that every one on the first floor that you can do, you will do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There was some talk concerning the flooding that may be increased or have a problem with more flooding. And as I understand it, he's going to have to reduce the amount of runoff from his property by, what is it, 25% now?
25%, yeah.
So you're going to have some way to reduce the runoff on your property by 25%, which will obviously do something to help the flooding.
Yes, sir.
And that's a requirement under our planning side. The talk about this becoming more like Metairie. I haven't been here 25 years. I've been here about 16 years. And everybody, I think, that has ever moved to Mandeville wants it to be just the way it was when we moved here and not one more person. A friend of mine moved over here before I did and used to joke about blowing up the bridge. I had no idea what he was talking about till I moved over here, and I understand that bridge needs to be torn down. We don't need any more people. You can't do that. You can't tell a person you can't develop your property. We're going to grow, and unfortunately or fortunately, that's going to happen. Any community that doesn't grow dies. Will we eventually be fully built out and have traffic problems like Metairie? Yeah, we probably will. It might be 50 years from now or more, but it's going to happen because we're going to continue to grow no matter what anybody does. And the concern about who would live here and would this be a viable project, we can't look at that.
Yeah, to me, that's not
our
the job.
province.
Yes, sir.
And if you build a stupid project and you lose money, that's on you. That's not on us. And we can't make zoning decisions based on helping you make money. That's not what we do. I don't see this as being a great place to put businesses, and the assisted living is something we do need. Martha's 100% correct. That's what we do
They're
need.
using that term wrong. It's not assisted living. We've used it too many times tonight. Let's be clear about
All
that.
right, what is it then?
Maybe independent living, but it's certainly not assisted living.
Yeah, I would call it independent living,
Independent living.
but
Okay.
you are
Thank
correct,
you,
Mr.
Todd.
Fisher.
Sorry.
And yet that was thrown out. And it's going to be for people that can get along by themselves but want smaller and easier access to the bathrooms and the tubs and the doorways for that kind of stuff. That's what this is contemplating.
Correct, and there is currently not any other establishment within 5 miles that would offer that to them.
I think overall, with some of the concessions you have suggested and said you're willing to do, this is going to be overall a good project. Hopefully, you'll be able to get the second entrance. I
Yes, sir.
always like to have second entrances to all of these things. If something happens to the front entrance, if a car breaks down or a tree falls, whatever, you really do need a second entrance. And I hope you can accomplish that, but I don't think we could shut this down because you don't have that. I would move to approve with the suggestions you made.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Randolph.
Yes, sir. should I move forward with the discussion before we
Sure.
do a second, or? Yeah, okay.
We can.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Bowers,
Yes, sir.
in your cooperative endeavor agreement, as I understand it, and just correct me if I'm wrong, you're considering from 55 to 40 units.
Yeah, anything less than 40, I'm in trouble. But so
Okay.
40 is correct. That's what I agreed to with Mr. Matthews moments ago.
The first floor, and Ms. Casabon and Mr. Matthew, thank you all for emphasizing the need for that. And Mr. Richard, thank you for clarifying that we're not talking about assistive, but independent. Of those 40 units, you're suggesting the first floor be aging specific.
Yes, built to the age-in
And on that
specifications.
first floor, how many units do you anticipate that being?
I believe it would be between 12 and 16,
Okay.
and we will work to make it a minimum of the percentage that I agreed tonight.
With that in mind, I'm going back to the drawing.
Yes.
As it relates to the exit on the south side.
Okay?
Just for clarification,
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at, and I thought Mr. Lauren was going to touch on this, but this is the piece of property we're talking about, am I right?
Yes, it's the rather weird. Looks like the state of Nevada.
Okay, yeah, yeah. This is Dale Will down here?
Dowell would be to the southernmost point
Correct.
tip. Yes, sir.
Explain to me how would the exit on the residents get from here to there?
Well, first of all, currently behind the Rouses, there is a service entrance where cars come and go.
And where is Rouse's? Since
It's
is this
Yes, sir.
right here?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. It's hard for me to see, but yes, it's right there. And right now, there's a service entry. Now, my understanding, there are trucks that stay there and drop off bread or what have you, because I believe it's currently not enforced. If you look at the back of that building, it looks like a war zone in Beirut. So I can tell you that once we start building in there, we're going to work with the parish to properly manage what's supposed to be done. If that's an access road, which is what we believe it to be, then it needs to be treated as such, and that would immediately give us rear access. So I could commit to that, okay? But I don't own that property. This property that I've referenced today is our adjudicating neighbor, and you do have cross-access. It's required under the parish. And so we will reach out to them. It's our understanding they're planning to start development over there in the next 6 months, and we intend to make a public record that we need to tie into their access.
Okay, Mr. Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for blurting out earlier about the
That's fine.
independent
It
versus
needed to be
assistant,
corrected.
but it is important because assistant living facilities are governed by the state of Louisiana.
So this is called aged living?
Yeah, you could call it independent living, but it's not governed. There's no medical type facilities. There's no assisting. But that's not the point. And I do want to, Mr. Bowers, I want to commend you for one is your conviction, and number two is your ability to offer these concessions. I think it's quite admirable, and I realize it costs you money, so I want to go on record as thanking you for that. Also, everybody who's ever followed me in my position on this commission, I am pro-growth, no doubt about it. I support growth in this parish, but I'd like to think I do it when it's smart and it makes sense. I'm also, or have been, I no longer, but I was a property owner on Dowell, and I'm very, very familiar with this area, having grown up, not here, but I've lived over 20 years in one of the nearer subdivisions. Man, I am struggling with this project. It's commercially zoned now, and I just cannot get a handle, personally, and maybe my fellow commissioners feel differently, but I just don't see this as residential. I can't think of another petitioner who would come forth and who would do as good a job as you're doing. So this is nothing against your project. I have a hard time with residential in this particular area. It's zoned commercial for a reason. I'd like to see it developed. It may take a long time. Maybe the entire bowling alley needs to be redeveloped. Of course, that's not our role here, but zoning is our role. And I'm struggling with supporting this change. And again, no disrespect. I think you've probably done as good a job as anybody I've ever seen come before us. But again, my problem is making this residential. That being said, the rest of your project's fantastic. The comments you're making about aged living, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are spot on. And I recognize that necessarily the drainage problems are not your problems. I'm in no way putting the traffic problems on 22 on you. All these things we've talked about tonight, I'm with you. I'm just struggling with this being residential, so.
Yeah, Mr. Richard, I know where your business was. You have a very successful claims administration company. I'm in a similar line of business. I will tell you that I've owned it for many years. My brother and I paid $1 million for a piece of dirt that candidly wasn't worth $1 million, and we screwed up. I don't know of another use for it. I mean, in the end of the day, in real estate, it's always the highest and best use. I truly believe a assisted center back there like this, it's just a weird enough piece of land to make it work. And sometimes in life, it's not the perfect deals that you hit the home runs on. It's the oddballs. It's the curveballs. And to be honest with you, this is a screwy piece of land. And I offered Mr. Storm it back today for $1 less than I paid him. So he didn't take me up on that. So I think what I'm going to do is hope that everybody else up here sees the good I'm trying to do, sees the concessions I've made tonight, Mr. Richard, and supports me. And let's get to work on putting some people in their
Fair
homes.
enough. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lord.
Yes, I have a question for Helen. If you reduce the density to a maximum, that he's suggesting of 40 units, does that change the request in terms of what the rezoning request would be from to?
No, sir.
It would still have to be where we,
Correct.
okay.
Mr. Willie, you had your light on? Ms. Casbon.
Yeah. This too, it is an odd piece of land. I know it's zoned commercial, but I cannot see commercial in there, whether it takes a long time or not. I think this is a way of developing an area that needs help right now instead of in the future, and I'll second Mr. Matthews.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Davis, you have your light on?
Yeah, this is a question to staff. Now that the gentleman is talking about reducing the density from 55 to 40, how do you feel about that?
So the staff's recommendation is always based on a requested zoning change, and so we can't,
But
base
your recommendation was due to the density too. It clearly stated that you thought it was too high dense.
That's correct. However, the staff does not enforce any covenants.
Right.
So with all due respect, we have to go with what the maximum density is under the aid.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Matthews, a second by
Excuse me,
Ms.
Mr.
Casbon. Mr. Lauren?
Yes, the problem is, that the reason I asked the question earlier, and to point out what Jimmy is saying, even though we're saying 40 units, is it not true that if we zone it the way it's being requested, and tomorrow, for some reason, the whole deal falls through, and we've seen a lot of deals fall through, it's still going to be carrying that new zone. And it could be whatever falls under that zoning classification.
But, and Mr. Legal Counsel, if the petitioner agrees to the 40 units, and that's part of the motion, and I believe you said you were going to put these in as deed restrictions?
Correct. Then that could not do
Okay.
that. Then that could not
If
happen.
we have deed restrictions,
Yeah, and I've agreed to that tonight, so that you would be protected. If I drop dead tomorrow and my heirs sell the property, 40 places are going, not a single more.
Okay, all right. Is there any further discussion? We have a motion by Mr. Matthews, a second by Mr. Casabon to approve based on the petitioner's agreements and that was presented to the commission. Please vote. Motion carries.
I appreciate the time and the support. Thank you.
Does that need to vote? You do not have to. Yeah, okay, well, Oh, yeah. Yeah, just so the public knows, I'm sitting in Mr. Manella's seat, so my vote is going to be recorded under Mr. Manella right now, but it will be recorded properly in the minutes and everything. Thank you. All right, next item. There it is. Next item is item 2, which is case 2015-105ZC. Existing zoning is A3 Suburban District. The proposed zoning is A3 Suburban District and a manufactured housing overlay. It's 7,499.9 square feet. Petitioner is Charles Todd Savell. Owner is Charles Todd Savell. Parcel located on the south side of West Jefferson Street, east of North 24th Street, west of 23rd Street, being Lot 20, Square 157, Lacombe Park Subdivision, Ward 7, District 7. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured homes. Staff does not have any objection to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Savell, are you in the audience? Do you wish to come up and speak to the commission? All right. He's going to go with the staff recommendation.
He's a smart man.
I'll close the floor to the, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak against? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. I believe Mr. Davis's light was on first.
Question for staff on this. The lot's 50 by 150, so it's actually out of compliance with the actual A3 zoning, correct? Because doesn't A3 zoning have to have 100-foot frontage?
Yes, it's considered as a lot of record.
Okay, all right. And I'd like to know, for the gentleman who's trying to get the manufactured housing overlay, what is the size of this manufactured house you're going to be building? If you don't mind coming up and...
Sorry.
Sorry about that. These are questions I have to ask. And your name, please, too.
Christopher Savell. Yeah, the size of it's probably going to be a 16 by 80. Yeah, something in that vicinity.
16 by 80, is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that meets the requirements of 720 square foot. And is this going to be a new place, or is you just?
Yeah, pretty much new, probably within 5 years at least, something like that.
Okay, and you're going to put skirting around it and all this such? Okay. And of course, it's going to be, since it is that size, it won't have any problems with doing the offsets and stuff, being 30 feet from the street, right? And with a 10 foot on each side, that shouldn't be a problem, correct?
Setbacks are 25 in the front, 25 in the rear, and 5 on each side.
Setback is how much?
25 in the front, 25 in the rear, and 5 on each side.
For A3?
It's based on the lots of record setbacks.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Davis to approve, seconded by Mr. Randolph. Okay. Mr. Randolph turned his light off. Mr. Matthews.
I just have a question of staff, really. In the past, in the staff comments, there used to be comments about there being manufactured housing in the area, and you've kind of dropped that off recently. Is there a reason for that?
No, however, by providing the aerial, it gives you as well an idea of what the surrounding properties are developed with. If you're looking to the east of the property, there's a manufactured home. Across the street, it's undeveloped. On the west side, it's a single-family residence. There's a mix of stick-built homes and manufactured home in the area.
Well, it's just, some of this, I couldn't tell whether this was a manufactured home or not. There were 2 or 3 of them. It is somewhat helpful if you all can do that. If you can't, or there's some reason you prefer not, fine. But I liked the fact that you all mentioned that there were several manufactured homes in the area.
We'll certainly make an effort to provide that information to you, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, item 3, page 2, 2015-122-ZC. Existing zoning is a PBC1 Planned Business Center. The proposed zoning is HC3 Highway Commercial District. It's .15 acres. The petitioner is Miramont Properties LLC, Mike Salvetti. Owners Miramont Properties LLC, parcel located on the east side of Sterling Boulevard, south of I-12, north of Brewster Road, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
This is a request to rezone a .15 acre parcel, and if you look at the aerial, you'll see that it's just a small addition to a 3.5 acre parcel that was rezoned to HC3 in November of last year, and staff doesn't have any objection to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Is the owner here or someone representing? Yes, sir. Please step up to the mic and state your name and address.
Good evening, Mike Bucher, Sterling Properties, 109 North Park Boulevard, Covington. As Ms. Lambert said before, this is an addition to an earlier zoning change that was approved last year for the proposed Rooms to Go project, furniture store at the River Chase development. During the evolution of the design, subsequent to the original approval for the HC3 zoning, we moved the building slightly to accommodate, amongst other things, a live oak tree that we want to save on the property. By moving that building, we needed to add some additional acreage, 0.15 acres, to the site to accommodate the parking. And so we're just simply adding this into the zoning per Rooms to Go's request to have unified zoning across the entire site.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak for? Yes, ma'am.
Sandra Slafer, representing the AOA, and that we looked at this and we approved this change. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak for or against? I'll close the floor to the public. I'll bring it back to the commission. Mr. Willie, I don't know who's
Mr. Willie was first.
Just move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Willie for approval, seconded by Richard. Ms. Casabon.
I'll just third it. That's what I.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Matthews.
I have a question for staff. There's a note in here that the regional business center overlay will remain in effect. What effect will that have on this piece of property?
It's already in effect. No changes. We just wanted to mention that the RBCO is present and it will remain in effect.
Okay, but how does that affect this property?
Well, it doesn't affect the .15 acre. It's in itself. It affects the whole entire area, which is, there's an overlay on the whole entire site.
Okay, but that doesn't do anything to change anything for this piece of property?
No, I just wanted to mention that it remains in effect, that it does not remove it from that particular parcel.
Oh,
It was stated on the previous zoning change as well. As to be consistent,
Okay.
I just.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, case 2015-129-ZC. The existing zoning is NC5 Retail and Service District. Proposed zoning is HC2 Highway Commercial District. It's 5.51 acres. Petitioner is Mormont Properties LLC, Michael Boucher. Owners Mormont Properties LLC, parcel located on the south side of East Brewster Road, across from Sterling Boulevard, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
Staff doesn't have any objection to the request, considering that the parcel is located in close proximity to some existing high-intensity commercial uses and across from the site zone HC3 and PBC1. And at this time, staff would like to recommend approval.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address again for the record.
Mike Bucher, Sterling Properties, 109 North Park Boulevard, Covington. Thank you again. My colleague Austin here's got a couple visuals to share with you. One clarification I would like to make is that the zoning being requested in the application and what was approved and advertised for this is actually HC2A and not HC2. There is a difference, obviously, in terms of the overall height and square footage approved under HC2A, so I'd just like to make sure that everybody knows that is the zoning that we requested. The project in question is the first office building that we're designing at River Chase. The site is south of Brewster Road. So come over a little bit. This is Brewster Road here, Sterling Boulevard. Sam's Club is essentially right up here. This site is contained by Sterling Boulevard to the east, Brewster Road to the north, and the Christwood Ditch to the south. It's a 5-acre parcel that we have identified to build the first office building, which will be 2-story, approximately 45,000 gross square feet, roughly 40,000 rentable square feet. We've got a depiction of the building here for everybody to see. Our intention is for this to, as it is the first building, to be
Should be built right side up, probably.
built right side up in a very prominent place within the center at that main intersection of Sterling Boulevard and Brewster. As you can see, this is the intersection. The parking will be in the rear. We're parking 4 spaces per 1,000, so roughly 160 spaces. As we, have been, obviously understanding the office market and the dynamics of the office market here and wanting to get going with the first office building, this site is particularly intrigued because the visibility and access is probably one of the most prominent within the site. And given that it's confined on 3 sides, the site can't grow. It's a 5-acre site. It can only be a 5-acre site. This seemed like for us a reasonable place to be able to request an upzoning from NC5, which would only allow a 1-story use, 12,500 square feet, to HC2A, which would allow us up to 3 stories and 70,000 square feet. As we've designed this building, we're proposing 2 stories, 45,000 square feet.
Okay, let me go back and clarify a comment you made so that we have it right. You said that it was advertised incorrectly?
It was advertised correctly as HC2A, and if you look at your staff report, the request is for HC2A.
Okay.
The
So
agenda
just
is incorrect.
on the agenda, it's a typographical error.
That's correct, but it was advertised correctly.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. All right. All right, is there anyone else that wishes to speak in support of this?
Sandra Slifer, representing the AOA, that Sterling Cape and presented the project to us. We have been asking them when they were going to put up an office building at this site. We're very pleased to support this project. We feel as if it's the beginning of what is probably going to be the best professional office multi-use business park in St. Tammany. So we're very happy to support this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for this project? Anyone wish to speak against this zoning? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Any commissioners have any comment? Mr. Davis.
I have a question for the gentleman.
Yes, sir.
On the northern side of Brewster, so that's Highway Commercial 3, correct?
On the north side, Highway Commercial 3, that's
Right,
correct,
and then
on that side.
You're requesting Highway Commercial 2A, correct?
2A, that's correct.
Now, I see Highway Commercial 1 to the south of that, but is there going to be a strip of NC5 still left below this area?
So
The transition between the Highway Commercial 1 and the HC2A, or does the HC2A butt up against Highway Commercial 1?
the HC2A is going to butt up against NC5 to the east.
Okay.
Brewster Road is to the north, and Christwood Ditch is to the south. And then the Christwood Church and Retirement Center is on the other side of that.
Okay. just an interesting kind of flow there, you know, to go from Highway Commercial 3 to Highway Commercial 2A to NC5 back to Highway Commercial 1, that's all. Do you own that Highway Commercial 1 property as well, the Sterling?
The Highway Commercial 1 in question, I'm sorry, are you referring to?
South of the Highway Commercial 2 that you're requesting?
No, that's all on the Christwood
That's all
side.
Christwood? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's definitely all on the Christwood side. On the south side of the Christwood ditch, that's correct.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Davis to approve, seconded by Mr. Matthews. Well, all the lights went out, so I guess none of the commissioners wish to speak. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, zoning case 2015-132-ZC, existing zoning is NC4, Neighborhood Institutional District. Proposed zoning is A4A, Single Family Residential District. It's 8.892 acres. The petitioner is WBB Realty LLC, Joshua Weiner. The owner is WBB Realty LLC, Joshua Weiner. Parcel located on the south side of Maison du Lac Boulevard, west of Louisiana 1085, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
If we would, I would suggest to maybe hear the next case as well at the same time, because the two projects are related, and vote separately, ZC 0003020.
All right, just see if the commission would like to hear the two projects together. The
Second.
motion by Mr. Lauren to hear items 5 and 6 together, seconded by Mr. Randolph. Item 6 is zoning case 00-03-020, major amendment to PUD, Plan Unit Development Overlay and rezoning of 8.89 acres to a PUD, Plan Unit Development Overlay. It's 157.602 acres. Petitioner is WBB Realty LLC. Owner WBB Realty LLC. Parcel located on the west side of Louisiana 1085 on the east side of Ochsner Boulevard, north of Louisiana Highway 21, Ward 1, District 1. Staff, you want to
Yes.
make your comments on both?
Absolutely. If we look at the first request, 2015-132, basically the petitioner is requesting to change the zoning from NC4 to A4A, and this parcel is directly abutting the Maison du Lac PUD, and the request basically is to allow for a higher density and to attach this parcel in question to the Maison du Lac PUD. At this time, staff would like to recommend approval to the A4A. And if we move to the ZC 0003020, it was originally approved as a PUD, as a residential age-restricted plan unit development in April 2000. And later on, a major amendment to the PUD was submitted and approved in February 2008, consisting of an addition of 28 garden homes and a change of uses of the phase from 60-unit assisted living facility to a 32-unit condominium. It is now presented to you with, several requests for changes. And the first one, which is related to the previous zoning request, is to an addition of 8.8 acre parcel of land to be developed with 43 garden homes, and also an additional 7 garden homes within the existing boundaries of the Maison du Lac subdivision. The proposed units are proposed to be added to the existing phases of the subdivision, which is already developed with garden homes, and the access will be through the Maison du Lac subdivision. The second request, and this is consists of a change in use of lot CH1A and CH1B, which is located in the center of the subdivision. If you look at the originally approved plan, the site originally approved to be developed with condominiums and now proposed to be developed with 36 single-family residential lots of a minimum size of 65 by 120. And the third request consists of a change in use of parcel 4B from a 7.15 acre green space area to be developed with commercial uses. And this is where I would like to point out that the petitioner submitted a revised list of uses where we've removed hotel, motel, and universities, college, as well as conference center, a convention center. And now will be limited to the mid-rise office, residential building, public utilities facility, parking lot, and deck, freestanding restaurant, mixed-use center, including residential, restaurant, retail, not exceeding 20%, and assisted living and senior care living. And the minimum setback, maximum height, signage, landscaping, lighting, and parking requirements have been provided as required. I'd like to point out that the density this time has been established through a yield plan, which is attached to this packet. The gross density of the 8.8 acre under the A4A would allow to 52 units. Based on the yield plan, it would allow for 46 lots, but this here proposed 43 lots, excluding the 7 garden homes that will be located within the existing boundaries of the PUD. A total of 46.75 acres of green space is proposed to be provided, including 1% dedicated to active recreation and 28 dedicated to passive. The existing active amenities consist of a playground for children, which is located in close proximity to the entrance to the subdivision. As passive amenities, park, lakes, and observation decks are provided throughout the subdivision. The previously approved plan in 2007 indicated that additional passive and active amenities would be provided, consisting of a walking path, clubhouse with various activities, and a swimming pool. Considering the size of the subdivision, staff feels that the additional amenities should be provided as originally proposed. At this time, staff would like to request that the development of the parcel 4B with commercial uses, the addition of the 8.8 acre to the site to be developed with garden homes, the additional 7 garden home site proposed to be located within the existing boundaries of the subdivision be approved. Staff is not completely opposed to the proposed addition of the 36 single-family residential lots. However, would recommend postponing the request, considering that the addition would result in a complete removal of some of the previously approved active and passive recreational amenities. As shown on the previously approved plan, the site that is identified as CH1A and 1B would allow for a walking path, a connecting walkway bridge over the lake, and a clubhouse with various activities in a swimming pool. And at this time, staff feels that maybe there's a need for a change of the previously approved amenities. However, there should be some amenities provided because it's one of the objective of the PUD.
Thank you. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Members of the Commission, Paul Marone on behalf of WBB Realty and the Wayner family. As Ms. Lambert just laid out there, this particular request has a lot of moving parts, and it's a little bit hard to follow at times. And so I'm going to go back through it a little bit just to try to clarify a few points, try to make sure that everybody understands where we started, where we're going, and what the details are. As Ms. Lambert noted, the genesis of this property and this project really goes back to 1999 when it started. I think it was approved in early 2000. At that time, it was an age-restricted facility that had a variety of housing types in it. There was a large assisted living component on what I'll call the peninsula. If you look at the plan, you'll see that in the center of the property. There was some commercial proposed for what is parcel 4B. That is before you this evening. There was conventional homes, there were garden homes, and so forth. Over the years, there have been a number of changes with this project. The project has, in fact, changed hands a few times. It was acquired by the Wayner family some years ago. And this is the first request made by the Wayners, really to try to clean up some of the issues that have lingered with the project since its earlier time frame. The prior amendments that were done that Ms. Lambert noted, one, the age restriction was removed at an earlier phase. Also, the peninsula area was amended, and in the original project format, that's where there was to be a large assisted living facility. There was some other housing on that site. In about 2008, the PUD was amended to bring a condominium component to that area. And that condominium plan called for a little over 150 units in multiple buildings ranging from 2, and I believe there were some 3-story buildings in there, but I could be mistaken about that, but certainly multi-level buildings. So as we sit here today, that's what the peninsula is zoned for. Our request really can be broken down, I think, into 2 categories. The one category has several subcategories. The first is that we are asking for a zoning change to the 8.892 acres. If you look at the packet of materials, you will see that that is a square piece of property that is near the front of Maison du Lac. It was not part of the original boundaries of the subdivision. It was originally zoned back in the comprehensive rezoning to NC4, and that is the zoning that it holds today. That parcel actually straddles a very large, very nice entrance gate feature to Maison du Lac. And so it made perfect sense for the Weiner family to acquire that parcel and to take it into the development. Zoned NC4, straddling the entrance gate, really did not help the project. So fortunately, the Weiners were able to acquire it, and that happened not too many years ago, or not too long ago. And so the effort is to rezone that, downzone it from its current NC4 zoning into a residential zone, and incorporate it into the PUD. It is adjacent to the existing garden home section for Maison du Lac, and so it made sense, we believe, to have it zoned for garden homes, which is the A4A designation that we're requesting. Now, other than the zoning of that 8.8 acre parcel, we have several amendments to the PUD itself. One is very easy. We're going to incorporate that 8.8 acres into the PUD. Okay? The second is that the original boundary of the PUD, where it met this neighborhood commercial parcel, had a strip of green space there. It was a buffer zone because it was bordering property that was not part of the development. When we combine this new 8.8 acre parcel with the PUD, it requires us to redesignate that strip of ground, because otherwise the 2 parcels would not flow together. So the request on that strip of land is to redefine the use of that land from the green space to garden homes, which are on both sides of it, and to incorporate that so that they will flow properly. The next request deals with the peninsula, and this is a major change to what is on the peninsula now as far as zoning goes. As I mentioned, it is zoned for condominiums, about 152 condominium units. We're proposing to scrap that and go with straight single-family residential units on that parcel of property. That will take the zoning on that parcel down from 152 to about 37. That move alone results in an overall reduction of density for the project. That takes into account adding the 8.8 acres. It takes into account the A4A zoning, the strip of ground between the two, and what we're doing there. So as a result of adding what we're adding with the reduction of what we're proposing on the peninsula, it is a net significant reduction in density for the overall project. The next item on our list this evening is Parcel 4B. Parcel 4B is located along Oshner Boulevard. It is adjacent to Parcel 4A, which was created as part of this project and was intended to, and in fact does house, a sub-regional sewer treatment facility that services Maison du Lac, but has capacity and services other areas as well. So at the time that the development was put in, they knew that there would be central utilities required. Southeastern Utilities was the provider at that time. They reached a cooperative endeavor agreement whereby they acquired the site, built the facility, which is ultimately now today in 2016 owned by the Parish and Tammany Utilities. 4B borders that to the north. On the south, it borders the Timber Branch. The result is that I believe if you look in your packet, 4B is a little over 7 acres, of which only about 4 acres or so are usable because there is a very large buffer required along the timber branch. That buffer is required pursuant to the Corps permit that was issued for this project. So in the beginning of the project, this parcel had always intended to be used for some type of use other than straight residential. It was commercial, or it was going to be, I think at one point there was discussions about mini storages on that. So it's been a number of items over the years, a number of proposed uses. Obviously, things have changed now with Ochsner Boulevard becoming a reality. When this project started, Ochsner Boulevard was not even a drawing on a plan in some back room. The implementation of the Ochsner Boulevard changes 4B. So what we have done is we looked at what is around 4B. We border the sewer treatment plant. There is HC1 in the area. We back up to an NC3. Just to our south, we have PBC1. So we took the PBC1 zoning as the base. We worked with staff, Mr. Wayner did, to eliminate some of the PBC1 uses that might have been objectionable. That results in the uses that Ms. Lambert mentioned, and I'll tick those off for you again briefly, but mid-rise office and residential buildings, public utility facilities, parking lots and decks, a freestanding restaurant, no drive-through, mixed-use centers, including residential, restaurants, and retail uses, provided that they do not exceed 20% of the developed floor area of any structure. And then assisted living and senior living facilities, which kind of brings us back to where we all started on this project back in 1999 as a possibility. So again, those uses, those permitted uses, were created with the PBC1 concept in mind and then whittled down a little further to meet what we think is more realistic and more appropriate on this particular parcel. The last item that I would like to address is the amenities. We've had some discussions with Ms. Lambert and staff about that, and I'd like to convey at least our thoughts to you for your consideration on the amenities. While this is not an age-restricted community at this time, the vast majority, at least by Mr. Wayner's estimation, about 95% of the residents that are in there are 55 or older. And so we do not have a large concentration of young families in this development. There are significant amenities there, and if you've ever driven into Maison du Lac, you will never see a finer entrance facility in this parish than you see at Maison du Lac. It is truly extraordinary. But they also have pocket parks throughout, they have benches, they have observation decks, they have sidewalks throughout, and they do have an open area with playground for children. When the issue of the amenities came up, some discussions were had with some of the residents in the development. And according to my understanding of those discussions, there was a general feeling among the residents that they did not want to have a pool and other amenities inside the development. That in doing so, ultimately what that will do is that will increase their dues. Because over time, while the developer will front those costs, over the long run, those costs are borne by the residents that live there. What is unique about this, or what is interesting about the location of this particular development, it is that it is within a very, very short distance to two major recreational facilities. One is the YMCA, which is just to the north. The other is Stone Creek, which is just to the south. So the concept that we would ask you to consider is that we be able to honor the request that we received from our residents, which was that let's keep the HOA dues down, give us the opportunity to recreate in those facilities which are immediately next door to us, and to enjoy the facilities that we have because we believe that that's enough. So we would ask for your consideration. We recognize the staff's concerns and comments. We understand where they're coming from. But we believe that in this instance, given what is inside the development now and what is immediately adjacent to it, and the desire by the residents to try to keep the homeowners association dues down, that we be allowed to move forward with the amenities as existing and as proposed. It's a very long-winded presentation with a lot of moving parts, and I'm sure that many of you will have questions, and I will be happy to answer those at the appropriate time, but we would respectfully request your consideration and approval for the one zoning change on the 8.8 acres and the various modifications to the PUD that I've gone through this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against? Yes, ma'am, come forward. Or the gentleman.
Oh, that's my husband, so I think I got elected.
Please state your name and address.
Laurette Springman, and I'm at 742 South Corniche du Lac in Maison du Lac. And I didn't finish filling out the speaker card, but I'll do that as soon as I finish. I just wanted to say that we have 5 residents here, and none of us were asked about the amenities and whether we wanted a swimming pool or what amenities that we wanted. So I'm not sure how they went about contacting the residents to find out whether we wanted some additional amenities or not. But I would like for you to consider what the staff is recommending, that maybe we go back and put that part on hold until we can get a better feel from the whole community about what we want in terms of amenities. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Robert Springman, 742 South Corniche du Lac in Covington. And I reiterate what my lovely wife said. There has been no contact with the majority of the residents who currently live there. The information that may have been presented this evening might have been old because the development has grown in the last year and a half by some 30 homes. And again, no one's been asked, do you want any amenities for this beautiful subdivision? Because it is a premier subdivision. The other item I'd like to talk about is the garden homes. Currently, the garden homes, which have 0 lot lines for the most part, the residents there don't have any place to park other than in their garage, and there seems to be a lot of overflow parking in the streets. According to the restrictions and covenants, the current developer who administers those restrictions is supposed to enforce that. Well, that is not being done. There is continuously parking everywhere. We have asked the developer to enforce it. That has not happened. So with that said, in the newer area that is being proposed, whether that gets approved, and if it gets approved, I would recommend that they designate some of those parcels, 1 or 2, whatever it may be, for just overflow parking. And lastly, my comment about the green space, and I read the information that was provided by the Weiner Company. If you go through the development, it is beautiful, and there is green space, but it's mainly areas that can't be built on, and that's hence what green space is. But they're not really usable. So again, I would recommend that they add some green space into the new garden home area because those residents, again, need to have a place to get out and walk around. And if they have pets, which almost 90% of the residents there have pets, have a place to walk their pets in the evening. So again, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against? I see no one indicating. I will go to the rebuttal. Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. As far as the amenities and the contact that Mr. Weiner may have had with the residents, all I can tell you is that he conveyed to me that he did speak with the residents. Now, can I tell you that he spoke with each one of them? I would tell you no, based on what Mr. Springman said and what his wife said. However, I am confident that there was communication there. I know that there were a number of emails of which I saw myself that were forwarded to me, so I know that there was an attempt to contact and to make contact to discuss these issues. I will certainly give their names to Mr. Weiner so that he can reach out to them and discuss the issue of the amenities. I would tell you, or I would urge you, not to hold up the project, the amendment to the PUD, based on the amenities. We know that there's a 10-day appeal period. I know for a fact that Mr. Weiner is open to dialogue on these issues. If the residents wish to talk with him, I feel certain that he will reach out to them tomorrow as soon as I give him this information, and we can have a dialogue about what amenities are there. There appears to be a split in some of the residents there, so somebody ultimately may not be happy, but we don't know that until we have that dialogue. But the dialogue about the amenities on a property such as this, I do not believe respectfully should hold up the approval or any action from you this evening, so that the matter can at least move forward through the process. With regards to the garden homes and the parking, Mr. Springman is right that the obligation of enforcing those covenants rests with the developer at this point and not this body. I will certainly pass along to Mr. Weiner that this is a concern. If he's not aware of it, he will be made aware of it. Mr. Weiner has a very long history of operating subdivisions. He is very conversant in his obligations as far as the developer goes vis-a-vis the restrictive covenants, and I feel certain that he will do what is appropriate in regards to enforcing those. The green space on the site. There is 30%, over 40 acres of the site is green space. There are buffers proposed along the new 8.8 acre parcel that is being included. So we far exceed the requirements of green space that the PUD calls for. While we have, in addition to that, those figures take into account the very large lake that's there, but it's only half credit. So remember that calculation is something that is mandated. So we have preserved sensitive areas along the creek. We do and have preserved a 100-foot buffer along one of our common property lines. Those were obligations that go back to the 1999 and 2000 approvals that I recall being a part of when the original design was laid out, and we're not modifying those in any way. I would respectfully request your approval this evening based on our request for the rezoning and the amendments to the PUD. I don't want to minimize the concern that the residents have raised. I take that seriously. I will convey that to Mr. Weiner, and I will commit to you that there will be dialogue tomorrow on these very issues with these individuals. With that said, again, we would request your approval, and if there are additional questions that any of you have, I'll be happy to try to answer those at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Paul. Mr. and Ms. Springman, do you have any rebuttal? Okay, thank you. I'll close the floor to the public. I'll bring it back to the commission. Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. This is one of the finest developments in the parish. You all would be commended for living there. It's beautiful. And as Mr. Morone said, that I envy your entrance gate. It's just really beautiful. I think he will follow up on the issue about the parking, and knowing Mr. Weiner and Mr. Morone, I believe we can count on them to do that. Other than that, Mr. Morone, your recitation was almost like my Christmas list I used to give my daddy. It was about that long. But with all of that being said, I would make a motion to approve.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Long to approve, seconded by Mr. Richard.
Which one are you voting on first?
Pardon?
Which one are you voting on first?
This should be zoning case 132. Is that what your motion is? Okay. Todd, is that your second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Matthews.
I don't know which case this would actually pertain to. But I do have two questions. Paul, one of them is really strictly for you. The garden homes, you said that there was that strip of green space between them, that you wanted to change that to also be zoned for the garden homes?
That's correct.
Okay. Will that piece of green space now be built on? Will there be units built on that?
Yes, a portion of that strip will be. 7 garden homes will be permitted on that strip pursuant to the plan.
Okay. And you're not going to provide additional green space someplace else to counteract that?
Well, we do have on the 8.8 acres, there are some buffers surrounding that. We are retaining some of the green space. The strip went all the way down to the neighboring subdivision. That is not, that area to the south is not being modified, so some of that is there. As far as creating new green space, the only other modifications to the plan, other than within the 8.8 acres, is this strip. We're not changing anything else or creating anything else as far as green space goes, other than what we're doing on the peninsula, which is not creating green space, but is greatly reducing the density.
Okay. And one other question that, while I understand that there may be some of the residents concerned about the swimming pool, because that will increase HOA dues in the future. Some of the other items on here, particularly the clubhouse, is something that a subdivision of this size and this grandeur probably should have for the residents to meet in the future for the HOA meetings and things like that. And I would strongly suggest that be considered, if not included. The putting green, the Baca court, horseshoe court, those things are all nice, but most people probably wouldn't use that, but the clubhouse probably would be used. Thank you.
And I will convey that to Mr. Weiner as well.
Mr. Randolph.
Yes, Paul, in reference to the green space, you're saying that it would include 1% dedicated to active recreation. Would that .465 acre include what Mr. Matthews was just referring to, or that's outside of the additional passive active amenities?
See, I'm not sure I completely followed that. Mr. Randolph, would you say that one more time?
The green space, there's a designated 1% to active recreation.
Right.
Okay. Does that 1%, which is really about .465 acres, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not almost a half of an acre.
Right.
Does that include what was previously approved in the plan?
Yes. Yes. I think that active area, if you look on your map, there is a green space area there that includes on the north side of the entrance road as you're coming in, where there is playground equipment and so forth. That was there. That's there today. That was installed. That's what that active area is referring to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Randolph? No, sir. Thank you. All right. Any of the commissioners have any further comments on zoning case 132? Not seeing any, I will request a vote on zoning case 2015-132 ZC. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, on zoning case, which we've just heard also, zoning case ZC 00-03-020. We've heard staff comments, so I'm looking for a motion. Motion by Mr. Matthews to approve, seconded by Mr. Richard and Mr. Lauren. All right, any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we don't seem to have any old business, new business, and I'll accept a motion. Mr. Lawrence.
Yes, sir. I did something inadvertently a while ago, and it won't change anything, but I'd like the record to reflect it. Back on make sure I get the right one. 201557 ZC.
The first one there, 57?
Yes.
Okay.
I inadvertently voted with the yes button, and I meant to vote no. It doesn't change the outcome. But I would like to correct my vote.
57, the first one. Okay. I'm told that by legal counsel you can't change your vote.
I can't make a correction when I made a mistake.
Well, to clarify, Mr. Chairman, if there was an error in the voting and the matter was still under consideration until the final vote was announced, then it would be appropriate for you to advise the chairman of the error. But once you've moved on to other items on the agenda, the ability to do that is no longer available to you. However, if the commission wishes to reconsider the matter, to vote again, you can certainly do that. However, I would caution against that because, of course, the parties to that item are no longer present.
Okay.
But I think it is sufficient that the minutes reflect that that was your intent when you voted and that you voted in error.
Just so long as that's in there somewhere.
Okay. All right, Mr. Randolph?
Mr. Lawrence, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Was it item number 157 ZC or 105 ZC? Item number 1.
The first item.
Okay.
It's 57.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, second. All right, thank you. I appreciate everybody working with us.
So he intended to vote,
No.
to vote no.
Right.
He voted yes.
Yeah. On that particular case, I'd like for you and Helen to get together because it was so much stuff that the gentleman agreed to. And just be sure that everything gets recorded and in the minutes correctly. And I know that the video minutes will take precedence